Hey, everybody, and welcome to 5 things your taproom staff should be doing. And I want to add to that right now because there is a sense of urgency to create the most memorable and profitable experiences you can in tap rooms. Everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching in the future. My name is Andrew Copeland. I run Craft Beer Professionals and Secret Hopper. Craft Beer Professionals started as a community where I was the only person. We've grown to 18,000 people. Our goal is to provide resources both in person and virtual. But today I am wearing my Secret Hopper hat. Secret Hopper, it's a mystery shopping company for tap rooms, but many of you probably already know that. Secret Hopper has helped hundreds of tap rooms just like you all across the country, and we've never been busier. Why? Because we are in the hospitality business and we are all working to get more butts in seats and getting them spending more. So your business is more likely, your brewery is most likely investing thousands of dollars, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in brewing the best beer and beverages possible. Am I right? Can I get a hand raise? Maybe a thumbs up there. Do not skimp on your tap room. Taproom data will be the tool that helps you create not only more memorable, but more profitable experiences. That has never been more important. If you'd like to chat following one-on-one, I would love to get to know you. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat where you can find the time for you and I to hang out one more time. But today, this talk is about all of you. So let's engage. If everybody who's here, please drop in the chat right now what brewery you are with. And since the holiday was recent, your favorite Halloween candy you still have lying around. So drop it in the chat, what brewery you're with, and the favorite Halloween candy you still have hiding in the cabinet, because I'm a little bit curious. And let's keep the chat busy. I want you to ask questions. I'll take some as we go if they make sense. We'll have time for plenty at the end, but I want you to leave with actionable takeaways and new ways to see greater success and higher tabs in your tap room. A little housekeeping first. We're going to talk a lot of data today, and I'm going to cite a couple different data sets. We've been collecting data since 2017. We have a set of over 10,000 unique taproom visits, but in some instances, we're going to cite specifically from 2024 to almost present in 2025 to let you know exactly what we're seeing right now. And on average, the tabs that I'll be citing, they include 2 guests and include tip and tax. And I'm not seeing any Halloween candy in the chat yet, so that's okay, but feel free to drop information and any questions that you have there over the course of the next 30 minutes. Now, a decade ago, many breweries had the if you brew it, they will come mentality. And as we all know, things changed just a little bit. There's a lot more breweries, first. We had a pandemic, and now guests are much, much more intentional about where they spend their time and money. And as we know, the beverage landscape is dramatically changing. A decade ago, everybody was probably just making beer. Maybe someone added seltzers. We've got slushies. We've got RTDs. We've got spirits. We're adding so many other beverages there because the goal is to please as many people as possible. And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but your competition isn't just big beer. It's every place fighting for a customer's dollar. And your goal is to be their first choice when they go out. So who here remembers a Venn diagram from elementary school? A Venn diagram, as you see here, uses overlapping circles to compare and organize information. Andrew from Trogs, hello. I had a great time visiting Hershey this past summer, and I don't remember if you and I met in person or not, but I did have a great experience and the tour was awesome. So as you can see, quality beer only makes up a portion of the diagram. A taproom experience is now also about having a memorable experience, a memorable atmosphere, and that could represent everything from the music to the lighting to the events to the temperature to the vibe. And also on the right, you see your staff. Your staff and how they engage is a huge component. When you get to the intersection of all three, the very center, you achieve what I refer to as a wow experience. This isn't when someone comes back just to enjoy your beer, but when they want all of the above and they can't wait to see you, and they come just to have their favorite beer and to come hang out with Ashley or Andrew or Jenna. So to help me understand your brewery a little bit more and to keep it interactive, in the chat, I would love for you to take a moment to describe your brewery in 5 words. It could be a phrase, It could be 5 random words, and maybe it's the tagline you already have. But I'd love to understand a little bit more about you. So for everyone who's here, and there's a few of you, drop it in the chat because I would love to get the opportunity to learn a little bit more about you. Now, let's dive deeper. And you can keep the chat active. When we collect Taproom data, we ask our mystery shoppers to rate the level of engagement from Taproom staff. We do this on a scale of low to neutral to moderate and high, with high being ideal. Talking about low engagement, that's when the staff's barely going through the motions. They're not present. They're not offering experiences. Maybe they're not even thanking you for coming. We do not want that. High engagement is when they welcome you upon entry. Maybe they introduce themselves. They're offering recommendations. They're asking if you want another beer. They're present. This is the type of experience when you have that with a team member or a guest when you're at a place. That's when they crave coming to see you next. I can't wait to come to the tap room to see Bill or Ken or anyone who's taking the time to connect on that meaningful level. And when we look at tabs for when you get low engagement versus high engagement over the years of 2017 to 2020, those visits with high engagement, the tabs were 14% higher. Not a huge difference, but it is something. Now let's look at 21 and 22. So 2021, 2022. This is when we start to see it mean a little bit more. Guests receiving a high level of engagement, nearly 30% higher tabs versus guests who received a low level of engagement. Now looking at 2022 to almost present, guests receiving a high level of engagement are spending 40% more. Hospitality matters. Even when I started Secret Hopper in 2017, I was preaching education and engagement, but I'm guilty of it too. I wasn't using the word hospitality. Folks, we are in the hospitality business, and your competition, once again, is everyone where a guest could spend their time and money. So, big picture, first-time guests who come to a tap room are only 45% likely to return and recommend that business if they receive low engagement. So unless Rob is dragging me back to a trivia night or some sort of market, I'm probably not going back to that business. But guests who receive high engagement on their first visit are 99% likely to return and recommend. That is a huge difference. Now, according to Google Trends, let's dive deep for a second. Hospitality is hot. On July 27th, 2025, it hit a peak score of 100, the single highest point in the last 5 years. But what does that really mean? I didn't know. I had to look it up. Google Trends doesn't show the exact number of searches. Instead, it measures how popular a term is relative to itself over time. For all intents and purposes, hospitality is having a moment, and you should care. Quick addition, since this data was initially collected, hospitality on Google Trends has hit yet another new peak in late September of 2025. So let's back up. In 2020, the average Google Trends score for hospitality was about 36. It rose slightly in 2021 to about 40, then about 50 in 2022, then continued to climb, reaching about 55 in 2023, almost 60 in 2024, and so far in 2025, the average is 72, its highest trends yet. Hospitality is not just trending upward, it's becoming a dominant focus for businesses everywhere. So why should you, brewery owners, taproom managers, care? I'll say it again, it's no longer just about the beer. The winners today, that could be you, are those creating experiences that guests crave. You're not just breweries. Many of you are restaurants. Some of you may be restaurants unwillingly. Some of you are beverage producers, event companies, and more. Whether or not we've been using the word hospitality all along, it's the business we're in. The competition is not just to be someone's favorite brewery, but to be their favorite destination. So why does engagement matter? I'm going to put some numbers to it. When you get high engagement as a guest versus low, that guest is spending 40% more. Would you rather see tabs of nearly $60 or barely over 40? 60 or 40? Which would you prefer? That is a huge difference. So now let's play a guessing game, everybody. And this is where I am looking over here at the chat, see what you think. What percentage of guests leave a tap room without, I repeat, without being both welcomed and thanked. Drop it in the chat right now. What percentage of a guest leave a taproom without being both welcomed and thanked? Really, the bookends of a taproom experience, so to speak. Spencer, I think we briefly passed each other in Durham, if I'm not mistaken. And were you in the session I did on innovation? If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. If I'm right, it was good to briefly see you. Okay. No one's got it spot on, but Rob, you are pretty close. We see 1 out of 5, literally 1 out of 5, 20 out of 100 guests leave a tap room without being welcomed and thanked. Wow. We can be better. That's the point there. Now, what I may say coming forward may seem like common sense, but based on data, these aspects we're about to dive into aren't happening at the level they should. So I live in Norfolk, Virginia. I love it here. And there was a brewery that opened near me a few years ago. And I want to tell you a brief story about that. We were visiting for the first time, my wife and my son and I. We walk in, and initially we're looking around. There's stanchion, but it's kind of all over the place. And there was initially confusion over where to order. We looked up, and the menu design was a little weird. It didn't have a lot of information. It didn't have the size options. It didn't even have all the pricing. It just seemed to have the names of the beer. So unless you knew, that lack of information could hurt your ordering process. But the most unusual and the part that stuck with me the most was I got up to the counter once I finally figured out where it was, and I just stand there. And what happened back was the two team members behind the bar, they just stared at me. It was as awkward as it is right now, me just staring at the screen. They literally just stood there waiting for me to speak. That's their job. Greet me, welcome me. Have I been here before? What are you interested in? Some sort of conversation to get me talking, sharing, building relationships. That initial greeting is so important. I eventually stumbled through the menu. I ordered 2 half pours, and while it's not the moral of the story, something else bad did happen. They give me 2 really hazy beers, which were really delicious, but I asked which was which, and they couldn't tell me. You got to give your guests the information because they could have the best beer in the world, but unless they have the tools to order it, they can never order it again. They don't have the tools to. So when you have that guest come in for the first time or the 100th time, that initial greeting is always important. It's important because it sets the tone for an engaging visit. Guests spend nearly 30% more when they receive a smile, hello, or some sort of welcoming gesture upon entering. Well, you might say, what if there's a line 20 deep? Well, simply, hey there, we'll be with you as shortly as possible. We're moving as quickly as we can. People like to be acknowledged. Staff, they're nearly 350% more likely to continue providing a high engagement experience when it begins with a simple greeting. And as we'll see, it comes a lot about stacking habits. And you'll probably see in your tap room, the team members, maybe your rock stars who are doing all the things we're going to talk about today. They're greeting the guests. They're offering recommendations. They're encouraging to go beer. They're stacking all of these positive habits. So that's what we're going to learn today, how to train your team and get them excited about doing these little things that make a big difference. Another one that I love, staff that introduce themselves see tabs 25% higher. So the reason I love this is we don't want to make your team, your place feel like Cheesecake Factory. But when you offer a name, hi, I'm Andrew, welcome to the brewery. That person on the other side of the bar at the table is going to be a little bit more likely to share with them. And when you can get that conversation going, you're more likely to build a relationship. You're going to be able to engage a little bit better. It really does go a long way. And once again, at the end of the visit, we're seeing not all visits include, but finish with that thank you. Once again, 1 out of 5 guests leave a tap room without that initial greeting and thank you. And at the end of the day, we want to give your guests a reason to return. And that final thank you is so important. Now, I've got another question for you all. How often are flights being encouraged? How often, when you go to a tap room, or staff saying, hey, Andrew, hey, Spencer, hey, Ken, would you like a flight? What percent of the time? Drop it in the chat real quick. Put all of your personal feelings about flights aside. We just want to kind of see how often brewery staff are asking the question. Okay, I'll stop there because Rob, you're really, really good at this game, and maybe you knew the answers already, but we are literally seeing Flights offered on 25% of visits, roughly 1 out of 4 guests. That means 75% of guests are never asked if they like to begin the flight. And asking someone if they like to start with a flight, you're not going to offend anybody. But asking someone if they'd like to begin with the flight is a great way to figure out pretty quickly, if they've been here before, if they're very familiar with tap rooms, and it helps you guide their journey, which we're going to dive into right now. So some of the guests, as I just mentioned, may have never been to your brewery before. Some of these guests may have never been to a single brewery in their life. It's important to help them find the one beverage that resonates with them. So real quick, raise your hand, drop it in the chat. There's 2 different angles to this. Who likes having flights as a guest? I prefer asking this question in person because I can see all the hands go up, because I think most of us, we do enjoy trying new beers when we go to a brewery for the first time. Because I can't drink 5 beers or whatever it may be. I'm only limited. I have a 6-year-old, so my drinking habits have changed a little bit over the years. So flight's a nice way for me to try a little bit more. Yeah, a lot of hands up. Then I'll ask the flip side of the question, and I can see through the camera. Who likes pouring flights? Yep, just as I expected. No hands are going up right now. But there is financial reasons you should be offering flights. So let's first look at it. Guests are 350% more likely to order a flight when a staff suggests it. Some of the numbers I'm going to say are wild, but by simply asking a guest a question, the likelihood of them converting to action is huge. So guests are 350% more likely to order a flight when staff suggests it. And how does this impact how much they spend? Average tabs are $13 higher when the suggestion is made. So you're doing 2 things there. You're helping that person figure out what they want. And then once they've found it, well, of course they want to have a pint of it. So the tab size is definitely different. And not only are they tipping more, but tips go up a bit. So tip percentages rise by 4 points because they appreciate that engagement. They really appreciate you taking the time to help them figure out what they want to enjoy that day. Guests are also ridiculous. This number is just fun to say. 457% more likely to buy to-go beer, which we'll dive into shortly, when staff suggests both a flight and to-go. And when staff suggests to-go and that flight, like we're talking about right now, tabs increase in size by 44%. Now on to one of my favorite questions, and several of you are joining from North Carolina. This question is thanks to Katie Creech of the Glass Jug, who I saw the other day at the North Carolina Craft Brewers Conference. She taught me that she loves to train her team to ask the question, what are you in the mood for? Now, the reason I love adding this question to your repertoire is, let's say I like imperial stouts. On a cold winter night by a fire, it could be perfect. But a 90-degree day in the summertime of North Carolina when there's no breeze, I probably don't want imperial stout. So maybe you ask the flight question. Maybe you ask, what are you in the mood for? It helps people figure out what they really want. And what we see when someone actually begins with a flight, their likelihood of returning increases by nearly 10% because you're giving them another reason to return, which is what this is all about. So let's do a rapid fire round of some scenarios when you should ask a guest if they want a flight. But once again, these are some questions that will never upset a guest, and there is no downside at all to asking a guest, even me, if they like to start with a flight. So here are some times you can ask if someone wants to begin with a flight. Maybe you don't recognize the guest. Would you like to start with the flight? Maybe they verbally say they've never been here before. Maybe the guest appears confused about the ordering experience. Maybe they just have a lot of questions about the menu. Maybe they're a little unsure of what they want. Maybe your tap room has a massive selection, so many beers. Maybe your tap room has a rotating menu. Once again, no one's going to get upset if you ask them if they want a flight. Now, the next question I have for you. How often does staff ask guests if they'd like another drink? The scenario is I'm finishing up my first drink. How often is someone coming by or asking me if I want another? Let's drop that in the chat. I am watching right over here while I take a sip of water. How often do staff ask guests if they like another drink? Rob, let's see if you can keep your streak going. Okay, someone please get closer than Rob. That's all I'm saying right now. Okay, Ken. Ken is the winner of this round. Sorry, Rob. We see that staff ask guests if they like another drink 60% of the time. Not bad, right? better than the last couple questions, but that means 4 out of 10 people aren't being asked if they want another. And hey, look, this picture is from Trogs. Andrew, I don't think this is you, but this gentleman actually served me when I was at Trogs, and I already had this picture that someone on your team had sent me prior. So it was kind of funny to get served by the person I'd had in the picture before. So that was a fun little thing. But what happens when you don't offer another? You leave. I'm really glad you said he rocked, because if you said he wasn't there or something like that anymore, he got let go, it wouldn't make the story very good. But yeah, he did rock when I was there. But when someone doesn't ask you if you want another, you get frustrated. You leave. You have that next drink at home. You go to the brewery next door. You leave for the restaurant. It is such an important question to ask. And when staff encourage guests to order another drink, the average tab size magically increases by $6.83. Nearly $7. Magic, right? By saying, hey, Andrew, hey, Ken, would you like another? Guests who were asked and got another drink spend 82% more than those who weren't asked and didn't get one. Let's kind of reframe this. Guests who were asked and ordered another drink spend about $63 on average. Guests who weren't asked and didn't order another drink spend about 34. 63, 34. Once again, it's about stacking habits, but one you should get your team in the routine of doing is, hey, look like you really enjoyed that lager. Would you like another? And I repeat, nearly 40% of taproom visits involve guests who are not encouraged to order another drink. So don't let your guests feel forgotten. Remind your bar staff to check in regularly. Or if you have a bit of a tap room, maybe you don't have table service, but people are sitting all over the place, have a manager or floater, maybe you, simply touch tables every now and then, reminding them to order their next drink at the bar. I do caution you, if you don't do table service, you might not want to take their order at that table because it could set expectations for the next time. It could be easy to give them that second pint on a Wednesday afternoon, but on a busy Saturday, they might be waiting at their table for you to take that next drink order. I simply recommend encouraging them to visit the bar and order however they did the first time. Okay, your next question, everybody. We've got only a few more. How often do staff encourage to-go beer? How often, as I'm closing up, they say, hey, Andrew, would you like to take some home? I know you really enjoyed that Saison. Would you like to take a growler? I don't know why I said growler. I think very few of us are getting growlers much anymore, but let's say growler, 6-pack, whatever it would be. And we'll stop there because Ashley, you are very, very close. We see 1 out of 3 guests, about 33% of the time, guests are encouraging, staff are encouraging to-go beer. And this number actually is improving over the years. So now let's talk a little bit more about why your team needs to authentically be encouraging beer to go. Once again, we don't want your team to sound like a chain restaurant, but asking this question is not going to upset anyone at all. And it's a really easy way to increase tab size. So once again, the data shows that staff encourage to-go beer a third of the time. Guests only make the purchase on their own, as in when you don't ask if they want any, 9% of the time. But they make it 46% of the time, nearly 50% of the time when staff suggest it. Literally, just asking the question puts the idea in their heads. There's some people, as we try to attract new audiences, who maybe don't know that the beer is actually made over there and they can actually take some home. So the question could be teaching them how a brewery tap room works, which blows all of our minds, but there are still new guests coming to our establishment. So ask the question. Because guests are over 400% more likely to purchase to go when your team suggests it. So let's look at how this looks as numbers, as money. Guests who are asked and purchased to-go beer spend about $68. Guests who weren't asked and didn't buy to-go beer are only spending about $54. The higher tabs, 26% more. And many people think that guests tip less when ordering to-go beer. Well, maybe this is the case if I'm just running in on a holiday to purchase the crowler or 6-pack to go. But on taproom visits, when guests also order to go, we actually see tips increase slightly by a couple percentage points there. So I think this is the case because your team members who are ending the visit with, hey, Andrew, would you like to take some to go? They're also going through all the other engaging habits that we're talking about today that help make for more successful visits. And the impact of encouraging to go on loyalty and future visits, those who purchase to go are 22% more likely to plan a return visit within a month. Makes sense, right? I've got the beer in the fridge. It's going to run out eventually. I need to come back and get more. And I had such a great time there. So, a bonus fun fact looking at visits when staff suggests both to go and flights versus offering neither, tabs are 44% higher. So, train your team to naturally incorporate to go suggestions into these closing interactions. Now, I've done a couple versions of this talk over the years, but this is a new addition. So let's think about it. How often are staff asking guests to join the brewery's loyalty program? Your goal shouldn't just be to make the most of a guest's visit, but to create ways to increase their lifetime value. We're about to talk about how taproom staff are encouraging a guest to join a mailing list, loyalty program, membership, mug club, rewards program, whatever you call it. I'm going to kind of refer to it as loyalty for the next bit. But how often are they asking guests to sign up for one of these programs? Okay. Rob, I'm waiting for your answer on this one. I know you're going to be really close. Rob, because I'm picking on you a bunch, what brewery are you with? I'd love to learn. I'm trying to remember everybody's locations. And Rob, you are again pretty close. We're seeing that 20% of the time, and this is recent data, very, very recent data. 20% of the time, staff are asking guests if they want to join a loyalty program. So that means 4 out of 5 guests are not being asked that question. We need to change that, everybody. So the path we've taken today begins at the start of the visit, and now we're getting close to the point of the guest, but this shouldn't be the end of your relationship. Before they leave, they should already have a reason to return. So let's dive a little bit more into loyalty. When guests are asked about loyalty, nearly 30% say they'll return within a week versus only 14% when they're not asked. I repeat, guests asked about loyalty are more than twice as likely to return within a week. When loyalty is suggested, guests are far more likely to rate staff engagement as high. Once again, this makes sense. 67% of the time versus 44, because this higher engagement, they're stacking all the habits. And once again, higher staff engagement equals higher tabs and higher tips, which everybody wants. So now I want to talk about another way you can build loyalty, a events calendar. We talk about all the reasons people have to return. Events are a huge driver because many of you, you're breweries, but you're also event producers. A visitable events calendar is actually only present a little over 60% of taproom visits. And once again, it's about giving your guests a reason to return. That could be your beer, your beverages, your food, your staff, your events. Make sure you're making them aware of everything you have to offer. Your team can even give personalized recommendations. Oh, hey, Andrew, did you know we have the market that you really enjoyed last time coming this Saturday? You mentioned you like, I don't know, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We have trivia just on that next Thursday. So give them personalized recommendations to return and make sure you have a visible events calendar. For first-time guests not seeing an events calendar, 11% say they won't return. With a calendar visible, that drops to 5%. And it shouldn't just be about asking guests to sign up for these things that you offer. It should be about giving them a reason they want to sign up, where they're missing out if they don't sign up for your loyalty program, your membership, even just your mailing list. Let's think about how we may have been framing it and then how it could be. So, scenario number 1. Hey, Andrew, would you like to sign up for our loyalty program? Yeah, that's not very compelling. Most people already know what a loyalty program is, but asking like this does not tell me why it matters to me. I give you my email, and what am I getting in return? The brewery in this situation is the hero. I'm just completing the form. Now, scenario number 2. Hey, Andrew, if you sign up for our rewards program today, you will get $5 off your next pint, an exclusive brewery t-shirt, 15% off future purchases, and invites to special releases and events. That is much, 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 much more exciting. Now I see how signing up benefits me. I get to save money. I get to access perks others do not. I get to unlock something. I become the hero of my own taproom experience. So scenario 1, the brewery, you maybe are asking for something. Scenario 2, the guest is winning and you can get them into becoming a super fan. We've just talked about 5 things your team should be doing, and I'll be sending the deck out in the rewatch of this later. But we all know it's easier said than done. They're busy. They're doing so many different things. How can we get them to remember? I'd love to pause for a moment and ask you, how are you getting your team to do all of the things? Whether it's greet guests, offer recommendations. Real quick, if you could in the chat, which is to my right, what are you doing that's actually working to motivate your team? And in a moment, we're going to talk about how to empower your staff to make it happen. But as always, I would love to learn from you what you're doing to get your team as pumped as I am about doing all these things that can make you more money. And I hope over the next little while, you actually get motivated to motivate your team a little bit more to do the things we just talked about. And when we talk about our guests, we're talking about making those customized experience, starting them with a flight, offering them recommendations, figuring out why they came and give them reasons to return. But customized experiences aren't just for your guest. You, as owners and managers, need to understand why your team is working there. Some people, maybe they just really like beer and always wanted to work in a brewery. Maybe for some, maybe they're college students. It's just a summer job. Maybe someone wants to be your next taproom manager. Maybe someone wants to, own their own brewery someday. It's so important to understand why people are working there. So a couple of years ago, near me, I gave an in-person training, and I essentially asked the team, they never had a meeting before. So this is the first time they've ever done a training like this. I said, what's going to motivate all of you to encourage more to-go beer on a Saturday afternoon? We went around the room. What do you think motivated the people in this room? You can give me a dollar value, you can say an item. How much do you think it took to motivate all of their staff to get better at asking the guest if they want to take some home? Drop in the chat what you think motivated them to just be better that Saturday and asking the question, hey, Andrew, do you want to take some home? I'll give you about 10 seconds to drop it there. Recognition. Well, Susan, recognition definitely is valuable, and you perhaps are already reading ahead on this slide. We're going to get there in a moment. But recognition is awesome, as we'll see in just a second. Being part of a great team. Yeah, everybody likes to feel appreciated, right? Encouragement, totally. If you all had to put a dollar amount to it, how much would the person who sold the most growlers, cans on a Saturday afternoon want to take home as their prize? So at this brewery, all they wanted was a $20 Chick-fil-A gift card. Now, I encourage you to find it to a local spot near you, but literally a $20 gift card to buy fancy chicken sandwiches motivated everyone behind the bar that day to ask that question. And as we just saw, the data shows that the likelihood of someone purchasing increases a ton by simply asking the question. So a couple things I recommend to you all. We've shared a lot of data today. And Andrew, when you get back to Trogs and you say, hey, everybody, we need to encourage more flights, they're going to say, why? Well, share the data from today. Show them how it's going to make them more money. Let them know how it impacts them. You all can tell your team to do all these things, but when they hear from a third party that has data, it becomes a little, oh, wow, I didn't know that. You bet I want to make more money. So just like that Chick-fil-A story just now, people like rewards. Maybe it's a Chick-fil-A gift card, something to another local restaurant. Maybe it's like a trophy, just something you give them. Maybe it's low fills. Maybe it's an extra brewery search. Rewards kind of refers to things. So some people like that. Recognition. Recognition can come in a few different forms. Maybe it's, Rob, you did an awesome job behind the bar on Saturday. Everybody give it up for Rob. Maybe it's a shout out in your team newsletter. Maybe you write it on a board in some shared staff space. Recognition, people always love that. Opportunity. Like I mentioned, some people want room to grow with your company. Maybe they want to, have a career with you all. Maybe they want to be your taproom manager. Maybe they want to move up and be the GM someday. Maybe they want to own their own brewery. Maybe they want to be Cicerone certified. These are opportunities you can give your team. Maybe you can get them a membership to the Pink Boot Society. People like to learn and give them opportunity to grow with your team because the more opportunity you can give them, the more valuable they can be. Now, this final one, it's kind of like hospitality I mentioned earlier. I wasn't actually saying the word, but it was part of what I was preaching. People like to feel appreciated. Simply thanking someone, you're doing a fantastic job. We appreciate you. Times are tough right now, and maybe you can't do some of the things we just talked about. So just letting people know you appreciate them goes a really, really long way. But I definitely encourage you to ask your team what motivates them. Because sometimes, having some sort of staff-wide contest, it could be frustrating for some. Maybe you have that rock star on your team who's always the top salesperson, and everybody else might get a little discouraged. So maybe you individualize it. Maybe you have individual rewards for people hitting specific goals, whether it's saying sell X number of crowlers, or maybe it's if you sell more crowlers in November than you did in October, we're going to buy X number of percent. We're going to reward you with this. Really, really individualize it and work on motivating everybody to build the habits that you want to see them, practice. So this is a big one. We've talked about 5 things today. Even following this, I don't want you to go back to your team and give them 5 things to do. Pick one. Pick your focus. Share the data. Give them a reason to get motivated. Give them a goal and pick that metric to monitor. You could use it to pick that metric and you can monitor it through secret hopper data, which you can help collect, or maybe it's data you already have in your POS. But most importantly, don't overwhelm them with 10 things to do at once. Dedicate a week, maybe a month, to a specific goal. Ultimately, you want to turn that action into a habit. Hey, welcome to the brewery. Have you been here before? Would you like to start with a flight? You really enjoyed that lager. Would you like another? Hey, we've got this brand new membership program. By signing up, you receive A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And hey, don't forget to take some to go. This beer we only have on hand for a little bit. Now is your chance to take some home and share it with your friends. Turning these actions into habits is going to create much more engaging team members. So Secret Hopper is working with breweries all across the country because, as I mentioned earlier, you're all making delicious beers that I hope to try someday. But why aren't you investing in experience? Secret Hopper provides a report each month. You all are busy. That way you can read it. You can know pretty quickly, oh, Susan's doing a great job. We need to recognize her. Or Rob, sorry, maybe we need to give you a little bit more training. The goal with Secret Hopper is to also make it super affordable for you all. That way you can have these actionable insights for continuous improvement. We have a couple different partnerships available. We have a 6-month partnership. And on that one, when someone comes in, they're going to order a flight followed by a pint. And at the 6-month mark, it's only $50 per visit. And we actually see the average secret hop generate $53. So bringing in 53, your cost 50. We also have a 6-month partnership that is at $60 per visit. We can add food in as well. And we see that the average brewpub secret hop generates $84 at the 6-month mark. Many of you have food these days. Your cost is only $75 per visit, 75, 84. And when we work with breweries, we're typically going to send in 4 shoppers per month, different times of the day, different days of the week, different levels of busyness that paint a strong picture of your tap room. That way, when you get the data, you can read it and use it to create more memorable and profitable experiences. But right now, I would love to open up the floor to see if anybody has any questions. You can unmute, you can ask, you can drop it in the chat. But if you have something you want to talk about later, I'd love to have a one-on-one conversation. I am truly lucky spending my time on phone calls with all the people across the country doing what you're doing. I love to learn and pass along information. I'm dropping the link in the chat right there if anybody wants to talk more taproom about things we talked about today, about other taproom related topics. But I appreciate you. And I'll give it a moment more to see if anybody has any questions, if you're just curious about our data or any other thing regarding anything taproom. My favorite thing to talk about. I don't believe there's not a single question here. Well, in that case, I look forward to chatting with you all one-on-one. I appreciate your time today. As the industry continues to change, your tap room is ground zero. You've got your highest profits there. We'd love to be part of your journey. And everybody, I hope to share pints and see you soon. Cheers.